Just right. Share screen. All right, so we covered a bit of chapter 10. It's a little redundant, but I just want to make sure we go through it, and then I'll get into 11 and 12 today, as far as I can get to. And then we're getting very, very close to the end of the textbook after that. There's no more textbook, but lectures. And any group meetings we do, we'll just be talking about your outlines, your topics, your presentations, how to get feedback, and applying all the things we learned in the textbook. So chapter 10, again, is making decisions and solving problems. Remember, there's a difference between decision-making and solving a problem. We learned all that, and you've got that D/M means decision making. It's when you choose from a group of alternatives. So again, like I'm saying, like if you're not discussing multiple topics for your presentation ideas, you're not making a decision because there's only one choice to decide, right? Yes or no is not a decision, right? That's the difference. You need more, so that's why I suggest all of you in the group in the Canvas discussion again should be offering ideas for topics and just say, what about this? What about that? What do you think about that? And then start a Google Doc and link it there, right? Why not? And then everyone can make sure they're getting it. And then you just kind of set up the templates, right? For all the ones even in the persuasive outline down the road, and then the business presentation out down the road as well. And that could just be one person in your group taking a little initiative, and that's what creates leadership. We talked about that earlier. So, and these are the 6 steps to making a decision. And those are, it takes time to do this, but usually when you want to make a good decision, you don't have to, you can't afford to be wrong, right? Like in business or something like that. So, and then we talked about being risk averse, which means that you're less risky, and that's the very young and the elderly, right? They tend to be very, very safe. So we moved on to the methods of group decision making. We went through those, and these are actually been covered before. So you got how expertise matters, right? You always look to the expert, and then there's also ratings, rankings, majority rule, minority, and the consensus, which is again unanimous commitment, which is incredibly rare. All right, so we got some tips for making decisions in groups. We're talking about making a clear criteria. So I would, in my mind, I list out what's a good topic. I'll give you a good example for an informed speech, easy to research. Fun. After that, yeah, I think that's the 2 things I would really think about for a topic, right? Like a topic that's fun to talk about, because then it's easier for the group members to have some enthusiasm, energy, and create some synergy and cohesiveness among the group. And then also, again, I told you, easy to research. I just think that's important too, because this is an informative speech. There should be a lot of facts in it, right? So think about how you can find a topic that meets, definitely that. I think those 2 criteria, and then you can add in a few others, right? Okay, so they focus on finding also high quality, useful information. Again, doing some research, not just for the sake of it. Really, it's related to the issue, right? So let me think about, let me go to procon.org, like the professor's suggestion, and think about that's a great resource for an informed speech topic and persuasive speech topic. Let's find an issue that's big enough where we can provide a lot of interesting information about, for example, should we get rid of student debt and make college free? Because that's trillion dollars or more. We're talking about almost 2 trillion. That's a lot of money, right? Okay, so and then all the people. What about me? I paid off lots of school loans in the past, right? I didn't get them all just forgiven. So see, there's some inconsistency there. That's interesting, right? So all right, but I think actually it's probably a good idea, having done the research. All right, so 10.2, group problem solving. We're talking about now overcoming obstacles, right? Not making decisions, but challenges arise and you deal with them. Right. So we talked about how groups are really, really good at this, much better than individuals. And we talked about how you want to define it. Again, you're making a distinction between decision making and problem solving. And you talk about the differences being that, like in problem solving, you make a lot of decisions, right, to solve the problem. As a decision making, you're just like, I got vote on December 8th recently, and you only vote for one candidate once each year. You don't get to do multiples, right? You just see it's much simpler analysis. And you talk about how you can break a problem into 3 elements. An undesirable existing situation, like the water situation in Jackson, Mississippi, where there's no clean drinking water for the one. I think it's the largest city in Mississippi. And number 2, that's pretty crazy, right? It's like, you don't think that would happen in America, but it happened in Flint, Michigan, actually, also, right? And number 2, which is also predominantly Black, which is really, that's where it made you go like, And number 2, a goal or group of wish that they want to achieve. And number 3, like, let's get clean drinking water for everybody. This is America. That shouldn't happen, right? Where you just don't have clean drinking water for like a whole city, not just a couple people, right? And number 3, obstacles that keep a group from achieving its goal: money, political attitudes, There could be, you know, like in Ukraine, you've got the Russian army preventing you from achieving their goal, right? So there you go. All right, so problem solving again talks about eliminating obstacles or managing them so you can achieve your objective. So barriers in 10.2, we talked about halt. Just group members aren't that productive or useful if they're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. So everybody make sure everybody's rested, fueled up. That's also when you have groups, people and or work and school, people want to show up ready to go because you don't want to be tired because you pulled the all-nighter party, right? Just because you show up doesn't mean that you're actually doing very much because you're gonna be so hungry and tired and sleepy and just there you go. All right, so be well rested. We talked about all the different things here, the lack of structure, because people don't understand the roles or how to stay in their lane. There's a lack of cultural sensitivity to the different diverse group members, and people don't understand each other. I actually know some men who got fired from jobs because they got a woman boss and they just said, I ain't taking orders from a woman. So they got fired. They just wouldn't do it, even though it was their job and they needed that job. Number 3, lack of planning. Again, just preparation. You have group members who don't know what's going on. They're surprised by things. That's often really, really difficult, right? So you just want to, again, that's why you want to communicate. Just put out due dates. The structure. If you're holding me like, will this stuff actually make my group better? But you want to get a good grade in this class by doing all that stuff in your group discussion? Yeah, right. So that's right, because you're learning, you're training what to do in a real life situation where these things will actually really will work. Because the group members you'll be working with, like at work, they're committed, right? They're being paid. They pay attention, right? You'll see that you don't have any people who a lot of the problems you encounter in this class dealing with student group members when you go to real life where it's work, but not because you control the environment, right? Because family, you don't control the people you have to be a group with, or in social, right? But sometimes you have a choice, and that's usually work in the sense that all these people have been hired and have all gone through the interview process and they're qualified. Is that right? And you start to see how those type of groups of people can do just amazing things together. And then again, just the lack of resources as well, right? Again, physical space could be like, I don't have a laptop, I don't have good internet, you know, so again, wrong people are present, you know, the boss matters because they actually can make things happen. Time pressure, and you've got all these due dates. This is an accelerated online semester this year at EVC, and then you got poor communication, just people not. I mean, again, if I look at the discussions, I would say that they're, you know, you have a requirement within this class to message or talk to your groups and do Canvas discussions, right? And your classmates if you want as well, right? By watching the group presentations and leaving some comments. So a lot of people will do that near the end of the semester. They don't do it now. They do it, right? They realize, oh, I got to get these points in. But then, you know what? I would say do them now, just because it's great feedback. The group members can read it and say, yeah, right, that's actually really good when students also give you comments and feedback about your presentation, not just me. I tend to harp on the same things a lot. So you got an unsupportive social climate, again, negative attitudes. These things will be just a group killer. And then lack of problem solving skill. So occasionally you're just unskilled for this particular problem, right? So we talked about 10.3 now, the 3 approaches to group problem solving, a descriptive, a functional approach, and a prescriptive approach, right? And we went over these and talked about, there's just talking about the typical patterns of communication when it comes to descriptive. Functional is we're talking about task requirements and effective communication, which leads to effective problem solving, right? Like the military is unbelievably effective communication because if they miscommunicate, people die, right? Really bad things happen, right? So they have really strict rules about communication and you have to respond, right? Like, and everybody has to be timely and right. And but you have a lot of training and organization and again, you have committed members again, right? Because they don't want to get killed because they, you know, give the coordinates wrong or something like that too. They'll feel pretty guilty, by the way, if you make a mistake like that. Friendly fire's always been very, very real part of war, and it's pretty sad that your child goes off to war fighting for your country and just gets killed by their own country on accident, right? Gets bombed or shot, or just lots of incidents have happened. So if you remember Pat Tillman, actually Leland High School out of San Jose, very, very famous story. He got killed by friendly fire in Afghanistan, and he was actually a former NFL football player who quit his $1 million contract to volunteer after 9/11, by the way, sorry, for the military, joined the Rangers, and then was him and his brother were off doing stuff. And then when he died, they covered it up because it was just so embarrassing, right? That this like it was basically he was America's superhero. If you want to read about Pat Tillman. So, all right, virtual groups. So we talked about this also because that's you. There are advantages to that. There's disadvantages. And we found that for structured linear tasks, which is our assignments, virtual groups are pretty good for that. And also in community mediated settings, that's also really good because you can record everything. But again, so if you're using Discord, you should be recording it theoretically, and then at least get the text chatter down and post it again in the Canvas discussion, make sure everyone gets their points, right? So I can then see what was going on. Virtual groups often generate more ideas when brainstorming than face-to-face groups. Yeah, if you have problems with your group, you don't email me, by the way. If you email your group members, right? That's a fundamental facet of this class, by the way. I can't solve any of your problems usually, right? So I'm just grading, assessing. You're in a group. You're in a race with a team. Try and finish and see what happens. Right? I'm just the referee, right? You understand that? And I just see at the end who finishes and who doesn't. So communicate with your group members, not me, when you have issues with the group. You'll see actually that's kind of a fundamental principle of this class, because it's up to you to deal with your group members, not me, if you understand that, right? Especially in real life. Okay, so disadvantages. Again, just there's less time because things go faster, which haste makes waste, can lead to errors. And again, there's also people tend to be a little more group thinky and less good at evaluating pros and cons. Remember doing a cost benefit analysis of an idea, and then in the face-to-face meetings. Right? Again, you can ask questions, really expand upon things when you're face-to-face. Make sure it's really. I think I can test it, right, in a synchronous communication setting. If you're doing asynchronous communication, you just see that's wrong with problems, because I can send a message and people can never read it, or they can take 3 days to actually respond to it, right? And you see how that asynchronous communication just bogs a group down. It's like you're only as fast as the slowest communicator in your group, right? You think about that as a group. All right, so 10.3, the functional approach. Here, we're going to dive into, we talked about the 3 types here. You've got the descriptive, functional, prescriptive approach. So we'll dive into the functional approach. And that's where you talk about really, again, functions, right? Things happen. There are results. It's like a machinery or industry, and it's all about task requirements. So again, there are 5 key functions. You want to develop an accurate understanding of the problems. You understand, like, for example, what's making me causing this pain in my elbow, right? I really need to, because if I don't understand that, I can't heal it, right? Or deal with it. So number 2, develop acceptable requirements for an acceptable choice. Well, I don't want to chop off my arm. And then I lose my whole arm, right? Just to get rid of the elbow problem. So you think about, like, what are some, again, criteria? Or I told you about the informed speech topic. I had those 2, fun and easy to research. So I would think about, like, what are some criteria for what's an acceptable choice? I want at least, the choices, the options to meet these criteria, a couple. Develop many alternatives. So I get a couple options. So I'm making decisions, not just yes or no on one idea. And then number 4, assess the positive features of the alternatives or options, right? What are the positives? What are the negatives? I guess I'm doing a pro-con analysis, or what we call CBA, cost benefit analysis, right? And if you're good decision-making, you want to be a good decision-maker in life, do that for everything. Think about people, costs, the benefits of the relationship, right? You think about, like, buying this car in today's economy, the costs and the benefits of that, right? But if you need a car because you got to go to work and all this kind of, right, like, it's like you got to deal with the cost, right? Or you talk about where should I go to college, right? Or what major should I go? Costs and benefits, right? And that's a really good way to make decisions. So and then group communications, you incorporate these functions and interactions, or what Hirakawa and others call vigilant thinkers, right? Vigilant thinkers are awesome. They're critical thinkers, and they pay attention to the process of solving problems. They're detailed. It's like when you build a like the domino thing. Has anybody seen that, where you have a million of them in a row and you make them do, like, people do really elaborate stuff, right? You got to make sure the problem is, I need to make the dominoes go and everything to go from the beginning to the end, right? And that's, so how do I solve this problem, right? It's very detailed, because everything, that one hiccup causes the whole thing to fail. So again, you pay attention to the process, and there's evidence that groups that believe they will be effective in using vigilance thinking skills will in fact be actually better critical thinkers and effectively, right? So they're just really detailed. They ask a lot of questions, and they're aware of what's going on. They know what's going on. So you do some research, so you understand the issue, right? So I'm going to do our group's going to do an informative speech topic on I don't know. How about pizza? That's an easy one. A lot of things to talk about when it comes to pizza, for example. Or I'm going to talk about maybe the places I'd like to shop: Trader Joe's, Costco, Whole Foods, Sprouts, right, and farmers markets. And I really do a lot of research. So I know what I'm talking about. And so even when I'm as other group members, because we're all working together. When even though they have their part of the assignment, you know, and that's not yours, you can help that with it because you're just aware, you're thinking about how it all fits together, right? And that's a vigilant thinker. You have to be vigilant. That requires a lot of effort, mental effort. That's exhausting. You have to be a good thinker, and a lot of people, the human brain, when it comes to thinking, it likes simple. It's why we stereotype people. It's why we don't like making hard, complex decisions. And I'm sure some of us understand that. It's just causes stress and anxiety, right? So you want to be like a vigilant thinker, where you're like you're not getting stress and anxiety. You're just aware of everything, so you can make a careful decision, and then you'll be usually happy with the results. So the bona fide group perspective, the phrase bona fide means real, authentic, or genuine, right? So what are your bona fides? What are the things that prove you're real, authentic, or genuine? I have where's my passport? Actually, I have my passport card here. I'll just flip it upside down. I want to see you the information to steal or something like that. It's right there, right? And the idea here is this proves that I'm an American citizen, and it has my name, my address. No, it doesn't have my address. It just has my passport ID number, my nationality, my birth date, my gender, my place of birth, and an expiration date and an acquisition date, right? So good for employment, right? This is something that's literally my bona fides. It proves I'm a real person here, at least, right? So on paper. I was thinking about people who have, alternative identities, or they hide their identities, right? So that's the bona fide perspective on groups is concerned. Again, how real groups function in organizations is not really talking about what happens in a textbook. We're really talking about what happens in reality. That group members bring all these personal things or other distractions to their life, to the group, because it affects how they communicate with the group and then work in the group. So 10 before is in communication functions of effective group problem solvers. We talk about an analysis function, right? We're talking about functional, the approach to making decisions, solving problems. So we want to use, again, a clear criteria. So I was thinking about, again, my real estate deals. Talked about this a little bit last time. I have a criteria for real estate, and one simple one is just has to be cul-de-sac, court, or dead end. I do not ever buy a house on a street where there's car traffic, except for the people who live there. And it's really, really big about. I'm really big about that. Just makes it quieter, safer. Criminals don't come to rob your, burglarize your house. It's all the neighbors know each other better because you're like in a circle. We talked about the round table again earlier, and like people communicate better, right? In a neighborhood, if you're in a circle and you all face each other, as opposed to you're just down a row or something like that. Okay, or a curb. So you see many viewpoints. Again, you gather data and researchers use evidence to reach a valid conclusion. Very analytical, very fact-based, information-based, and then ask appropriate questions. That's, again, really good to cross-examine and interrogate people. And we are going to do that in sorry, we don't do that in this class. That's the other class where we have an argumentation class where we learn how to cross-examine witnesses, right? For example, in a court perspective, like a murder witness, and you learn what kind of questions there are, and how to ask questions that just have like a yes or no answer, or what we call that's an open-ended, closed-ended question. And then an open-ended question is you can say how's your day going, right? You could talk for 1,000 hours if you wanted to answer that. So that's just very open-ended, and that's a good example of that. So the idea generation function, this is where you seek many alternatives and solutions. So you do a lot of brainstorming is really good for this. You make high quality statements to the group because you're knowledgeable, you've done your background research, you understand what's going on. So you can then generate the ideas. Because if you don't know what we're talking about, no way you're going to generate ideas. And then take a vacation from the problem to revitalize the group, because it's like we need to take breaks. That's just the human mind, right? Because a lot of intense focus can kind of get really tunnel vision in sometimes. Look at people in shootings. That they get tunnel vision. You only see what you see. And I would just if there's somebody with a gun, you want to have it's what we can learn in football. You want head on a swivel, right? Again, that goes to being a vigilant thinker. You need to be aware of your surroundings, but seeing everything, because we use our channel, our communication. We use our sight more than anything else to understand the world, right? So be aware, look at things, use your eyes, and then, but you need a break. Evaluation function. So now again, you get good at maybe not creating the ideas, but you get good at developing the pros and cons for the ideas that your group members throw to you, right? Again, as you kind of see that maybe you're not the most creative person, but once an idea throws out there, or you're good at like really thinking about, again, it's cost benefits, evaluate the opinion assumptions of others. Again, what are they assuming, and test solutions to meet the required criteria. So you realize these solutions really will work, right? They're not just ideas. Now, the personal sensitivity function says, we care about the task, but we also care about the feelings of the group. And we want to know, we want everybody to be happy. And because group happiness is like harmony, right? Everything works a little bit better. So we listen to the minority arguments and opinions, and we listen to feelings. And it's, again, women are a little bit more in tune and better at that as well, especially when they're the leader of the group. So there you go. And one thing, I'll give you a good example. You ever lead a group of children, right? Just for whatever reason, you're the one older authority figure, and you'll see that you want to be sensitive towards the feelings of the kids in your group, right? They're not like little automatons that will just follow you and do whatever you tell them to do, because it's the opposite. All right, so 10.3.5, the prescriptive approach. We finished up the functional approach. Again, think about prescriptions like medical prescriptions. I have a tetanus, so I get a tetanus shot, right? And you need to get a prescription for that before you get the tetanus shot. So they do a medical diagnosis, right, and determine this is what you need, and then you get it. So, all right. So this is a way to do group problem solving. It's based on the assumptions that group members need more than the general understanding of how groups solve problems or what the key functions of group communication are. We talk about specific do's and specific don'ts when we come up with an agenda for problem solving in a group, and prescriptive approaches invite group members to perform certain behaviors in a specific order to achieve a group goal, right? So it's just steps, do, right? And again, agenda is like a list of things to do, right? Just give some basic structure to what's going on, any kind of meeting and whatsoever. So you always want to have one, because otherwise the meeting could just take forever, and you don't want that, right? So two assumptions that underline the prescriptive approach to problem solving. There's number one, that group members are consistently rational, because people are not. And number two, the prescribed agenda or set of techniques will result in a better solution. So you want to make sure, definitely, you're assuming that everyone's rational, that we're going to do what's right. Because sometimes people are prescribed medicine by doctors and they don't take it. Right? Not everyone is rational and follows the prescription, right? It's this step-by-step process of why we got to this problem, this solution. And then number two is, again, we're assuming that doing the step-by-step like agenda or these set of techniques is good. And those are both pretty fair assumptions, but again, just not always true. So 10.4, we talked about the cultural assumptions that go into influencing problem solving and decision making, or PS and DM. So we talked about how individualism and collectivisms at play culturally, right? Again, you have people in line, even when they have to because of the cable, they don't want to fall to their death. Because if you Google like people falling to their death on half dome, it happens a lot. People let go of the cable because you can slide a long way. It's really traumatic if you were witness that or something too, right? So it's some like movie, that's real life, unfortunately. And you understand that it's just showing you that, like, teamwork or the individual self, right? Like no one, nobody's passing people up this thing, right? That'd be very individualist, by the way. Men and women are, again, different in groups based on culture as well. So you throw in the gender on top of the individualists or collectivists or cultural kind of like influence on the decision-making problem solving, that becomes another variable. So here's some steps for better understanding. It's number one, again, to develop mindfulness. It's just conscious awareness and sensitivity that people are different. There are like many ways to like do something, and there's no right way or wrong way. It's just, whatever the cultures want, right? Sometimes you eat with your hands, sometimes you eat with a fork and a knife, sometimes you eat with chopsticks, right? It just depends. And then number two, be flexible. That's good, right? If you're too set in your ways, you're going to be the worst person for traveling and understanding other people's cultures and dealing with them, right? Number three, you tolerate uncertainty, ambiguity, right? Because you don't know what to expect. Things are new. You don't always communicate well with the people. I saw my uncle and aunt this weekend in Portland, and I was really busy traveling, and I was in a place where there was no cell phone or an internet at all for about 27 hours. Right. And just like talking to someone either who doesn't speak English very well, they just speak their Korean is their main language, and my Korean's almost non-existent pretty much. So that makes things hard. You just kind of don't know what to expect and what's going to happen, right? You don't even know if your words are going to make sense to them. So number four is we resist stereotyping and negative judgments about others. We're going to be open-minded and understand that why people stereotype. Again, we're simple, our brains are simple, but you want to treat everyone as a unique individual whenever you can. And that's actually, think about that a lot too. I try not to group people to see like, oh, these people all seem the same or something. I always think about that. The human personality is what makes every human being on this planet unique. Even though we can really group some people together, right? Like I've had some people, you see them and they're like, that's like your doppelganger, right? So somebody like looks like you, acts like you, kind of like, it's really right. If you know the metaphor of the doppelganger, and which is a doppelganger was a mythical creature that could look just like you, right? It could like steal your identity, your face, because it would just copy you, right? And then I think the first like body stature type of thing. So yeah, so that's the a metaphor that applies now. And then ask questions, right? Just to get to understand people. Don't ask ignorant questions. That'll offend the people. Just, if you know how to be cool about it. And, I often, the way I do it, for example, is I've traveled a lot. So it can kind of like, instead of saying like, where are you from, or something like that, or I might say, hey, I was traveling. I've been in, like Czechoslovakia, and I understand some German, expected Deutsch, but that's not German. But it's like, is it Czech or Slovakian? And then they're totally like interested in talk to you, right? And I haven't asked like a personal or too direct, insensitive question. I kind of, and by the way, I can, yeah, well, it helps a lot to travel a lot, that right? But you think of bridges to build towards people. So chapter 11, let's talk about using these different techniques that we're learning, right, in terms of problem solving now. So 11.1 is we're going to identify the 5 key strategies of prescriptive problem solving. 11.2 will define and differentiate between group structure and group interaction. 11.3 we'll use the steps and tools of reflective thinking to solve a problem in a small group discussion. And 11.4 we'll apply their ideal solution to single question problem solving methods to a group discussion. We'll actually do an example of that. And 11.5 will determine which, if any, single problem solving approach is the most suitable for any given group discussion. Yeah, just kind of, we talked about like leadership, how I think adaptive leadership is the best, right? It depends. You kind of learn all the methods of leadership and apply the one that fits the situation that you're in, as opposed to always doing this style of leadership, right? So okay, and people don't do that because they're power wielders. Just you learn this style, and a lot of people, again, we're simple. They're like, I learned that one, I'm gonna stick to this one, right? Okay. So 11.1, you should take a class in leadership, just leadership. I believe that. You can read a lot of books about leadership. There's just so much knowledge out there about what makes a good leader, the things you can do to be an effective leader. And I think it's a really good thing to do about life, because you need to first lead yourself, first and foremost, right? And then number 2, lead maybe eventually, again, your family. It could be different groups and organizations, nonprofits, charities, volunteer work that you want to do. You could be a leader at work. That's really good, because you usually get paid way better than the non-leaders, right? So okay, so 11.1, let's dive into the prescriptive problem solving strategy. Again, P/S means problem solving. So again, there are 5 key elements. We got to always, again, identify and define the problem. What is causing this problem in Jackson, Mississippi, where there's no clean drinking water, right? Why does 80,000 people not have water coming out of their faucets to shower in, to drink, and to clean their cook with, right? Number 2, let's analyze the problem. What happened? What's going on? Who's affected? How fast do we have to act? Because it's just like so terrible that's, like a natural disaster, kind of emergency money, right? Boom, right there. Versus no, we can take our time, because we have to be careful how we do this. Number 3 is like we identify the possible solutions. Like, can we fix it? Do we have to replace it, build a new one, move everybody away? And number 4, select the best solution out of all those, and then implement the solution. So yeah, so those are the 5 steps. So according to Dewey, a reflective thinker considers these questions. Again, you just want to reflect and think about the process, right? Because a reflection is, once it's built, then you can reflect upon it, right? So you can't reflect upon it while you're building it. That's being analytical. Once something's there, you can see your reflection and then think about what that means to you. So reflective thinker considers these questions. Number 1, what is the felt difficulty or concern? Like, what are we worried about? Number 2, where is it located? And then how is it defined? And number 3, the elbow pain here, and it's a severe pain. They use a scale of 1 through 10 for pain. I would say it's like a 9. And number, what are the possible solutions to the felt difficulty? Again, medicine, rest, a support strap, like what do I call it? An elbow brace, right? It could be a crutch, cut off the arm. In the old days, that was the solution a lot, right? Not for elbow pain, but for a lot of things, right? Because you didn't want gangrene or different things to happen to get to the rest of your body. And what are the logical reasons that support that solution? So maybe cost benefit analysis, what additional testing observation need to be done to confirm the validity of the solution. So we don't just assume that these different solutions work. We can test them, make some observations. What happened in the past when the medical doctor think, what's their expert? Again, remember, expertise always rules decisions. So again, what do the medical doctors think? Who are especially orthopedics experts, joint experts, right? I'm not going to ask OBGYN, obstetrician gynecologist, who's a pregnancy doctor about my elbow. Right? Although medical school is a basic training of the human anatomy. So dental school is similar, but they just focus on the brain and the head, really. But they get a very generic, dentists get a very generic, like rest of physiology, medical and all background. So 11.2, finding a balance. I don't know if you saw that, but in the movies, there was like, if you're bleeding out and you can't go to a hospital, you find a vet, because they can do stitches and some basic things, right? So 11.2, finding a balance of between group structure and interaction, page 166. So you want to balance the structure. You can't have too much structure, right? That becomes like bureaucratic. That, and then the way they can interact, right? So like, think about like, should I set up cubicles in a big open space? And how far apart should the cubicles be? And how tall should the little walls be, right? And you think about structure, the cubicles, and then how you do the structure so that people can still interact, but have some privacy, right? Or when they're working. So group structure consists of the agenda and other techniques and procedures to help a group stay focused on the task at hand, right? So structure is like the agenda, the list of things you want to do every day, every meeting, and other techniques and procedures, again, that help, again, groups to achieve things, because you're focused on the task only. I think about the horse that has the blinders on. They can only look at and focus on their task, walking where the carriage person wants them to go. So 11.2.1, let's talk groups need structure. Like you're in a soccer team, people need to know their positions. People need to know the coaches. People understand practice, the schedule, where the game is, how long the game is, what's the rules of the game that provide structure, right? So researchers have found that groups and teams have no planned structure or agenda, may have many more procedural problems, how to get things right done. That's procedures. Here's a summary of what researchers have found by observing naturally occurring or unhindered discussion where there is little or no structure. So you take away structure and this happens. The groups take too much time and interaction is really inefficient and it goes off task all the time, right? They don't stay blinded, focused. Number two, group members are prematurely focusing on solutions rather than analyzing issues. So you should think about the assignment. And then I threw out that criteria, and then I throw out some ideas, and then we decide which ideas are the best, and then we choose a topic, make an outline, make the presentation succeed, right? The way I see things, there's been like maybe 2 ideas there, mostly just one. And nobody's chosen the performance speech topic yet. So, right. So we just finished the group storytelling assignment. So we'll talk about in the next meetings, what we can learn from the presentations, make them better, because we're going to be done pretty soon with the textbook lecture. So number 3, the group often jumps to the first solution mentioned. Yeah. That, like the first topic mentioned, let's do that. It's not, how do you know it's a good topic for the group, right? And number 4, group members are that assignment. And then group members hop from one idea or proposal to the next without seeing the larger issues. And number 5, the group's more likely to be dominated by an outspoken group member. Conflicts likely to go unmanaged. And then any method of structure and group problem solving is better than no method at all. So yeah, any structure at all is better than being disorganized. Right? So if you're ever doing anything, type of meeting, group of people, doing Boy Scouts, you're at your kid's soccer game or baseball practice, or you're at a PTA meeting, or you're just hanging out in a group of friends, and you're trying to decide something, throwing a little structure out there will always make it better, right? Because no structure is negative. 11.2.2, groups need interaction though, right? So we still need to be able to communicate. Communication is so important to group success. So remember, high quality contributions early in the group's deliberation, improve group performance, so that when people do good stuff at the beginning, it sets a tone and an expectation up here, and then people in the group will meet it, right? Naturally. But if it's set low or there's no expectations at all, right? It's you don't know what's going to happen. So that's really, really important. So if you are like, okay, I don't want to participate that much, but if I'm going to participate, because it seems like that's really important for group success, is I'm going to do it at the beginning, right? Okay, so I think that's a good strategy, honestly, right? The more individuals that share information with others early in the group discussions, the more the group performance improves. That's why a group leader or group members should be sharing articles, topics, ideas, sharing, again, due dates, highlights from the discussions and assignments about what the group can do to get better. If group members not only share, but also understand the value and importance of individual contributions, then group performance improves as well. So in order to achieve all these principles, groups need facilitation. That means that, like, facility, a way and a place that things happen, right? Again, create some structural organization. In order to have a high school, you need a campus, right? You got building, classrooms, people sit, there's individual rooms, bathrooms, the gym, all the things that make you facilitate everything that goes on to make high school happen, right? Parking lot, bus areas, places for the custodian, storage for all the equipment, and think about all the things you need, at your high school in order to, pool, and then you need chlorine, and just, right? Okay, so, and then you balance structure and interaction. So again, like, thinking about cubicles as an example, and how you give everybody some privacy in a big space, but, like, again, how tall are the walls, how big are the cubicles, and how far apart are all the cubicles. Think of Matrix, where they're all, like super low and really close together, right? So then you got structure, again, use agendas, lists, problem solving steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You got some techniques like that, procedures, how to do things. Let's do democratic, let's all vote. I've suggested a lot of procedures about how to get topics out there, right? After you set a due date, everybody in your group suggests one topic for the assignment. You vote on them, most votes wins, right? And that way you always have multiple ideas for each topic, assignment, and you can find one that's better, not just the first one. And rules for how to do things, communicate, again, like the military, right? Every time you talk, you have to say copy or Roger at the end, right? So that people understand the communication. And there's interaction, right? You have give and take discussion, it goes back and forth, not just one person talks, everyone else listens, their reactions, and there's feedback and talk, right? So again, but for me to grade that and see that, and try to improve that and to give feedback on it has to be in the campus discussion for me to be able to see that, so I can do that, right? All right, I can't float over to your group and see what everyone in the group's thinking and saying to each other. Now, 11.3, let's talk about reflective thinking, the traditional approach to group problem solving. So this is what people have commonly done over time. And the steps we present here are not intended to be a one size fits all approach. They do, however, provide a logical, rational way of structuring group interaction. Sorry, hold on to make sure I don't have I'm gonna close my door. My kids are here. They're gonna make an odd noise. Hi guys. All right, I'm at work, so hold on. Let me finish up. So the traditional way people solve problems is they did something called reflective thinking, where something happened and then you thought about it afterwards and and then try to maybe remedy the situation. So let's 11.31 was let's identify and define the problem. So researchers have consistently found that groups develop better solutions to their problems if they take the time to analyze the issues before jumping in and listing possible solutions. So groups and teams have a tendency, however, to leap to a solution before looking to and analyzing the issues. Again, so I was just thinking about, look at your assignment, really think about it. What is this assignment? What do we have to accomplish? And that way we can be successful, right? Then you think about what topic then fits your analysis of the problem. In this case, an assignment, the informative speech presentation, right? And I throw out the criteria for a good topic. I think it's easy to research and fun. Easy to research gives you lots of information for your informative presentation, and fun just makes everything easier, better, and makes it better for the audience too, right? So, okay. You know what would be a fun topic? I think I would do a group informative speech on how to swear in, like, let's say there's 5 people in my group, we choose 5 languages, like, but not English, because we already know we use it, right? But it'd be fun to like learn how to curse in Spanish, like in German and like Japanese, like right? Why not Russian? If you ever go to war against these people, it's useful, right? Because you want to be yelling insults in their own language at them. All right, so we need more Arabic speakers in the FBI, by the way, and Farsi. So, all right. But anyhow, there's just, that. So you think about what's the problem, you analyze it. All right. So, what are the following questions we should ask? Well, number one, what is the specific problem the group is concerned about? We've got this top informative speech topic that we've come up and build an outline. Again, have the presentation. We're kind of building upon the storytelling assignments. We want to improve upon that. Number two, what are the obstacles that are keeping the group from its goals? Group members, due dates, time. We're you can list out the obstacles, right, that you think are in place that you need to go achieve, overwhelm, to make sure you have a successful group assignment, right? Is the question the group is trying to answer clear? Hopefully, yeah, right, for everybody. Otherwise, you haven't analyzed it properly. Number 4, what terms, concepts, or ideas need to be defined? Really, really important here because it's an informative speech. So I'm gonna make sure I define, like, the acronyms, right? The different words we're gonna talk about so everybody knows. That's some basic information, right? So for example, let's go to, maybe I was gonna talk about pizza, right? I'm gonna think about what is, I mean, my part of the topic is the history of pizza, right? So I'm just going to make sure I understand all that. I explain where, like, Naples, Italy is. I don't just say it out there. I explain what the margarita pizza is and where it comes from, Queen Margarita, and how I might talk about some abbreviations or just, again, things that the audience, I always make sure the audience understands what I'm saying. I don't assume they know what it means. Number 5 is who's harmed by the problem. Well, yeah, that's important, right? Men, women, if your problem is, again, Jackson, Mississippi, that people don't have clean drinking water there, right? You look at who's being harmed, right? Everybody who lives there, doesn't discriminate, but largely it's African American. And then number 6, when did the harmful effects of the problem occur? Right now, it's been occurring, right? And I'm gonna just zip out of there real quick because I don't want to talk about it wrongly. I'm just going to type in Jackson, Mississippi water crisis. Let's find out what exactly happened. So 180,000 people live there. It's from the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And what they found is over the last 2 months, people in Jackson have had to boil their tap water in order for them to drink clean or bathe. And just weeks ago, many of them had their water actually cut off. There was water full of dirt and sediment, and it's a majority Black city. So instead of focusing on the aging, neglected water system and delegating the federal funds needed, the governor is eyeing a state takeover of the whole water system. And then the state should stop all efforts to sabotage the local management of Jackson's water system. And we have seen this pattern before, the privatization of public resources, and they're opposing that. So that's interesting. So, but this is a little bit different because they're kind of talking about a solution. I just want to know what happened, right? And it's just here, it just again says since August 30th. So all of September, all of October, and now we're into the almost half of November. You see that the whole city's water system has had a lack of pressure, brown water spewing out, 40 days of boil water notice, but even then people are afraid to drink it. They've empowered the State Emergency Act, so the Health Department and the Emergency Management Agency to start overseeing repairs. And you see that plant apparently failed. So there you go. That's sad. It's wrong in America that that's happening. Oh, sorry, let me go back to the full screen version. It's back to chapter 11. If you want to talk about that, I think it would be awesome, right? Because you can talk about Flint, Michigan. Is it racism? Is it, should this really, why did it happen? It'd be interesting too. Solutions. Give all the information related to it. I think it'd be a fascinating topic too as well, right? And it matters, so people would listen. So, oops, wrong. So yeah, who and when, right? So we just learned a little bit about these questions and then the answers. Tools. So this is actually a pretty awesome part of the chapter. If you want to talk about very specific techniques to problem solving, the academics, we've put together a couple options here that are all pretty interesting. So let's talk about tools for defining the problem. This is stuff, by the way, if you threw it out at a business meeting, or like I created a Pareto chart, you're totally going to be impressed, everybody, right? So first one is we do a is not analysis. So early in a group's deliberation, group members consider problems such as questions such as what is the area or object with the problem? And then what is not the area or object with the problem? Where does the problem occur? Where does the problem not occur, right? And what are the symptoms? So you can kind of figure out the boundaries of it by asking a lot of questions like that. Where is it? Where is it not? And so, because a lot of times you don't know where it is, but you do know where it's not, and that helps eliminate by deduction where the problem isn't. So you can focus on the other areas, which doesn't necessarily tell you where it is, but you definitely at least have narrowed the search. There's also the journalist 6 questions. That's again asking who, what, when, where, how, why, how. I think it's important for any storyteller, anybody who's just providing background data. Again, if you're doing background research on any issue, you should know the who, what, when, where, when, how. So let's again do the Jackson, Mississippi water crisis. Again, who's being affected, majority Black city in Jackson, Mississippi. Again, what happened? Their water is not drinkable, boil notice, the water facility plant, I guess, fell apart. When did this happen? Started in August. And where? Again, Jackson, Mississippi, United States of America. Why? Interesting. And then how? Again, research-based questions there too. And then you've got the knowledge of what happened in Jackson, Mississippi for the water crisis, and that should make you competent as to what's happening and occurring. So you can answer this question and then do some more research and maybe deep dive. Really, really, the why question is probably the most fascinating. So Pareto charts. So we've got one here, and this is a bar graph, and it shows the data of a cause, source, or frequency of a problem. So you talk about the tallest bars on the left, always, and the shortest bars on the right, and you see a way to understand data. So here you've got what causes people to be late. So here you have the biggest causes, again, from on the left, and the smallest causes on the right, and you can see the actual percentages, and this would all add up theoretically to 100, and you can see the scale. Okay, so traffic's the number one reason people are reported late, then childcare issues, public transportation issues, the weather, overslept, emergencies, right? So you see the data is laid out in this chart. A lot of, again, you see this as opposed to hear numbers, right? Or read numbers, and you see that this is more effective. Again, the channel of sight is very, very important for comprehension of how you understand the world. There's a lot of research that says bar, that's why bar graphs and pie charts are very, very useful. Because also, if you're bad at math, the numbers, when people throw this out there, right? 33% of time it was traffic, childcare was, and I list them all out in percentages. People who are bad at math just get overwhelmed with the numbers, right? So you see how you can see it here. It's a lot easier to understand. So Pareto chart's really, really good. So if you're ever at work or you're making presentations, throw a Pareto chart in there of some data that you collected, maybe about the information, a formative topic that you're doing research on, right? Like we talked about earlier about just Jackson, the different things that might cause water to have gone wrong there, or the misspending, right? Like in Flint, Michigan, they basically didn't spend the money on the water structure there because they were poor Black people, basically, right? And there's a whole lawsuit, and they're suing the governor. There's a bunch of, because it's interesting who's really responsible for that, right? So, and there's actually been criminal referrals saying like, this is, if you don't do this, they all knew exactly what would happen, right? And they didn't care, or if they still did it for some reason. So, all right, so Pareto chart. Now you can do a SWOT analysis, and this one you actually to do for your business presentation. So when you propose your business idea, for example, I want to do a tutoring service, right? I'm going to do a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis in the presentation. So let's all learn about the SWOT. So the SWOT is an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. SWOT analysis is the technique used for helping groups and teams identify and analyze big issues that influence the group or organization. It can be helpful in both identifying and analyzing problems. All right, so U.S. businesses, it's a traditional part of a business plan. So you talk about like, okay, I want to open a coffee shop, right? What are the strengths? Coffee is huge in America. People spend a lot of money on coffee. People in my community want a mom and dad pop coffee shop, not another Starbucks or Pete's or Dunkin' Donuts thing, right? The chain. Weaknesses. There are those other places in actually, sorry, weaknesses might be like, I have never done a coffee shop before. I've never even done a small business before. The economy, interest rates are going up, inflation is high. Might not be the best time to start this business, right? Opportunities would be like, well, there's just, I can succeed, and this is a unique opportunity. That window may close, right? It's not going to remain open. The window of opportunity may not remain open for long. And I'm a big believer in opportunities, right? You don't do business deals because you want to do business deals. Usually there's just some unique opportunity there, right? I'll give you a good example. Or here, I bought a car once. I got a great deal on it. It was like a Toyota Highlander SUV, and I got it for like $25,000. And it was only like 3 years old. It was parked in the garage and only had like 5,000 miles on it. And then the woman like died. And then we're just selling the car. And they were moving, so they had to like get rid of it because they're like moving like in a couple days. So I just showed up with my checkbook and bought it and drove away. And it was a great deal. And car was an opportunity buy. Does that make sense? I didn't need it, but it was such a good opportunity because of the circumstances of why that seller had to get rid of it. By the way, that happened. If you find people who are moving away, need to sell stuff, they're desperate. They don't want to they can't take that stuff with them. So they have to get rid of it. See, that's how you get incredible leverage in terms of negotiations, right? So that's just opportunity. And then threats. Again, the competition. I might have lack of weaknesses. Again, might be the employment pool. The economy is really hard to find people to form a coffee shop, maybe to work there. And the threats are just, supply chain, competition. Maybe if I have some financial things that can emerge later down the issue road. Another mom and pop coffee shop place or boba place, like something not exactly like me, but similar, might be open close by, right? And so you do through the SWOT analysis, right? All right. So 11.3.2, let's analyze the problem. So what is the history of the problem? How long has it existed? Number two, we're talking about how serious it is. It needs to be significant. Number three, what are the causes of the problem? Don't fall into the logical fallacies, but understand, like, do research to understand causes, right? Because it's really, really hard to understand what causes X to happen. Number four, what are the effects of the problem? Usually very bad, negative. What are the symptoms of the problem? Right, when this thing happens, you start seeing other things go wrong, because they're all interconnected, and that's why the systems analysis or like the holistic analysis is really good to understand that. And number six is, what methods does the group already have for dealing with the problem? So what things do you have in place, right? Like if there's a fire, I have extinguisher, I can call 911, right? But the fire department has to show up to actually really take care of the fire, right? But I have some things already in place to deal with the problem, right? And then seven, what are the limitations of those methods? Again, I really need the fire department here, right? Because those things are all kind of temporary, small, and the fire extinguisher, once it's out, I can't just refill it or reuse it, right? So, and number eight, how much freedom does the group have in gathering information and attempting to solve the problem? What are the constraints? We have budget issues, time issues, we have people issues. And number nine, what obstacles, if you're doing it the bona fide perspective, you understand that just because you have 4 days to do this, if other people in their group member aren't they've got other things going on, priorities in their life, right? That 4 days is actually much smaller. And then remember, one of the most biggest negatives about group work is that people underestimate how much time it takes to do stuff, right? So number nine, what obstacles keep the group from achieving the goal? List those out: problem, solution, analysis. We just talked about that. And number 10, can the problem be divided into sub-problems for definition analysis and broken down? Again, like, I want to get my college degree. That is, I would break that down into all the different classes I have to take over the different times, over the different quarters or semesters, what classes they are, and how I'm going to pay for that, make it all schedule. And then I have a very good idea of the problem and analyze it and how to solve it. Instead of just saying, I got to get that degree, right? Let's just break down all the little sub problems. So force field analysis. So we had the Pareto chart, then we had SWOT. Got how to analyze it. Now we got the force field analysis. So to use the force field analysis, a group needs to have a clear statement of its goal, which can be stated in terms of what the group wants more or less of. For example, we need more money, we need more time, we need less interference from others. The group analyzes the goal by noting what driving forces make it likely to be achieved and what's restraining forces make it unlikely to be achieved. Right. So the group analyzes the goal. Again, think about, like, what drives us to success and what countervailing forces, restraining forces are going in there, maybe because I'm trying to paddle up the current, right? The current's pushing me backwards from me succeeding and achieving my goal, right? My driving force is my paddle and my willpower and my choices that I make and the actual design of my kayak or boat or music. So step one, let's identify the goal, objective, or target the group's trying to achieve, such as, let's get more money. I need more money, my budget. If you've ever been part of a student government, you get a budget, you give it out to all the different groups and clubs on campus. You got to figure out who gets what, right? Step two, on the right side of the chart, list all the restraining forces, things that currently keep the goal from achieving its goal, right? Group communication, participation, due dates, other distractions, or priorities, and lack of resources or more resources or things like that. Step three, on the left, you have a holiday coming up. I would think about that, right? That we don't want to do any work over Thanksgiving as a group, so let's get this done for sure. So we get a couple days, right? When I talk to that group, we plan it out so that we have a couple things here. Let's just get them done ahead of time. So Thanksgiving break is, again, relaxing, right? So on the left side of the chart, list all the driving forces. And then number four, the group can now decide whether to do one of the three things: A, increase the driving forces, or B, decrease the restraining forces, or C, increase selected driving forces while decreasing those restraining forces over which the group has control, right? So yeah, so A or B are a hybrid of A and B, which is C. So because you figure out, again, what you might not have complete influence over all the driving forces or all the restraining forces, but you manipulate those things you can influence. I believe in life, worry and stress over only things that you have control over, right? So do not worry about things that you have no influence or control over, right? No matter how important it is, it's not in your realm of influence. Don't worry about it. It makes everything harder if you do. PROMOD, PROMOD. So it's designed to make sure group members have an opportunity to first individually analyze the problem or issue under consideration and then systematically share that analysis with other group members. So results from his research studies, I should put the author in there, anyhow, it's a dude, have concluded that by first individually structuring the analysis of the problem and development of solutions, and then sharing the information with the entire group, groups develop a better high quality solution than if the group had not used the PROMOD technique, right? So here, I'm gonna do a lot, take the initiative. I'm the leader. I'm going to individually analyze the problem and then tell everybody in the group. Look, I even made a sample outline for everybody and assign everybody roles because I kind of think I know your strengths and weaknesses already. We got transitions built in there and a great introduction, but with everybody participating, we got a great conclusion with everybody participating, right? And that's a great example of PROMOD. I've already structured, did the analysis, developed a bunch of solutions, and I share it with the group, right? And the ideal group, what everybody would do is, and then everybody would share and like, wow, right? But just in your group, one person do this, take the initiative to do it, showing leadership is enough, right? Because this will help propel you into pretty good topic choices for your presentations down the road. So step one, let's individual problem analysis. So just by ourselves, what do we think the problem is? Right. Step two, my friend is unhappy. Why? Right. Let's not talk to each other about it. We just think about it by ourselves first. Why do we think maybe that's happening? Step two, group information exchange. So now we share as much information as we can with everybody we can in the group. Step three, individual problem solution. So, all right, just as an individual by myself, what would I do as a solution? Then work to talk to the group with everybody, share ideas, and come up with an idea. All right. So the idea is that before you go in your group interaction, you have thought by yourself and you've analyzed and then resolved it, which is why when you go to the group, you have something to say, right? Versus, again, the spontaneous group where you're just somebody who, again, is more introverted, somebody who hasn't taken the time to really think about the issue. They're not going to have anything to say during the group meeting, right? So PROMOD allows them to be prepared for the group meeting so that they can actually contribute. So the next slide has an illustration of a PROMOD. So you've got like as is, the to be state, and then the possible measures. And you see how we go from the as is state. We go, this is what it should be. And then these are all the solutions, right? So what is not, let's get the what is not going. And then we can understand the solutions. So cause and effect diagrams, like the fishbone diagram. So this is another technique, really, really useful. Again, use it at work, put into your slideshow presentation, PowerPoint at work or something like that, right? So, or you're doing I'm creating a neighborhood watch association. Because if you do that, you can get the signs, put them up, and it does reduce crime. Because maybe you have like a lot of car burglaries or something going on in your neighborhood, right? That's something that you could do and make your neighborhood better. And it's through public speaking, group communication, and getting your neighbors together on like that street. So where you can put up the signs. You can Google it and learn how to do it, and the criteria, things you have to do. One of the things I would do is, and you should do a slideshow at your house, invite all your neighbors. And I actually have students have done this twice in my life, and they actually formed a group, and it was awesome because they told me that it helped with the, because everybody cares in the neighborhood if your cars are being all broken into at nighttime, right? So, all right, cause and effect diagram. So the cause and effect diagram, also called the fishbone diagram, because it looks like the skeleton of a fish, is actually developed by a Japanese guy, Kaoru Ishikawa, who is a specialist in quality management. And this allows you to see cause and effect and relationship. So here we go on page 171 and figure 11.5, but here's my own diagram in this like Google slideshow. So you got all the things that cause problems to go wrong, right? So you've got Mother Nature, material issues, method issues, HR issues, machine issues, and measurement issues. And you can see that there's specific things that go into the cause here, like what goes wrong: humidity, heat, material, bad CD, wrong CD, the method, inserted it wrong, upside down or backwards, HR's training issues, brain fade, not following instructions, hardware issues like corruption, power failure, not enough memory, right? And then you can really see how causes effect. Because again, you see, people don't hear and understand, but people see, they understand better. There's a great example of how your slideshow and watching you communicate and having a camera view of all the speakers in the group communicate is very important, because me seeing you all speak in a lot of ways is more important than what I'm hearing. All right, criteria, page 172. How to establish it. So another task, often part of the analysis step of the reflective thinking process, is to formulate criteria, right? The set of standards or goals for an acceptable solution. Or typically articulating criteria helps the group know when it has developed a good solution, because the criteria spell out what the final outcome should look like, right? Because you've got a filter, a minimum standard. So here are some questions that can help your group develop criteria. So again, number one, what are you trying to accomplish? And what's the outcome? A, B, pass. I'm not sure. I don't care. Number two, how will we know when we have completed our task? Right, submitted and graded. Number three, which criteria standards are most important? Okay, what we're trying to learn, our grade, the professor's feedback. Number four, which criteria are less important? And then, for example, criteria for solution might include following. Number one, the solution should be inexpensive. We have a budget. A limited budget. Number two, the solution should be implemented by a certain date and time, due date. Number three, the solution should address the causes of the problem, not just the symptoms, because solutions that don't deal with the causes don't work, right? If I feel pain and I put a bandage there, but if I don't deal with what's causing me pain, right, the band-aid just deals with the symptom, never makes the cause go away. So I'll just keep feeling pain and using bandages, right? So I should fix the problem so I don't need the bandage, just the alleviation of the symptom. And number four, all group members should agree to the solution. Again, trying to get consensus. 11.33. Let's generate several possible solutions. So after analyzing a problem, identifying criteria for a solution, the group should turn its attention to listing possible solutions in tentative hypothetical terms. Creativity is needed at each step of the problem-solving process, but it is especially important when the group members develop solutions. Creativity is such an important part of group deliberations that we devote the next chapter to discussing the principles of groups, practices of group creativity. And by the way, this is a long chapter, by the way, we'll end here. But you can see chapter 12 is the last chapter too, by the way. So we'll talk about that one on Wednesday. And that'll wrap up the textbook lecture again. So get back here. So again, ask yourself, you're doing like a cost benefit analysis of each of the solutions. What are the advantages of each solution? What are the disadvantages? If the disadvantages outweigh the advantages, then you don't want to do it, right? Hopefully, if the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, then you probably want to do it. Number three, what would be the long-term and short-term effects of the solution if it were adopted? So that's important to understand, because there'll be some side effects. Number four, will the solution really solve the problem? Because if it doesn't, it's not a solution, and you can't assume it will solve the problem, right? And number five, does the solution conform to the criteria formulated by the group? So you've come up with the criteria, make sure it meets the criteria, and should the group modify the criteria? So sometimes you're like, we can't find a solution that meets our criteria, then we need to modify it, right? So like the military, it needs soldiers, so it's been reducing the standards for what they'll take. So you have a criminal record, it's okay. Your eyesight's not that great, that's okay too, right? We need the bodies, so they've reduced the standards for who's allowed to join the military. All sorts of different ways, by the way. And a lot of people said maybe that's a bad idea, by the way. Getting more bodies isn't worth who you're getting, right? So now, if group members agree, the criteria for a best solution may need to be changed or modified. So again, let's talk about tools for, and you should always change the criteria, right? Don't think about like the criteria is, immovable, because sometimes you have to adjust it. You're forced to, because you have no choice, right? So I can't buy a house that meets the criteria. I need to buy the house, so I'm going to be like a little bit stretch the budget, right? That's probably like the number one thing people will change in their criteria is like, my maximum budget was here. And then you look at all the options, you're like, let's push another 50,000 into it, right? So, now tools for analyzing solutions. Again, analyze the pros and cons, do the research. Again, I call it a CBA or cost benefit analysis. You can also do a rankings and rating system, right? Use a survey. I might, for example, go look at the best restaurants in South Lake Tahoe, go look at Yelp and look at all the star ratings, and then look at the average rankings and ratings, and then just put them all in order. And just kind of see by Yelp, this is what the best restaurants are, and kind of see if I agree, disagree, which ones have I been to. We have a couple of new ones here, by the way, mostly on the bougie end. All right, so on to 11.3.5. Let's talk about testing and implementing the solution. So this is really, really useful information too, by the way, and good for understanding how to really solve problems, because you have to test your solutions a lot of times. Sorry. So prototype, it's a smaller version of the solution your team has developed, so you can test it before implementing the solution on a wide scale. So prototype. So it's kind of like the mini version of what you might want to do. So I'm going to build like a new machine, and I build a prototype first, right? And then we kind of test the prototype, and if it's successful, then we try and sell it and build many of them, right? So I actually knew the guy who invented I don't even remember what it's called now. It was like mid 1990s. It was like the fungus ball. It was like a little ball made with all these little things sticking out, these little pokies, like a sea anemone. And it was kind of soft. You could throw it, catch it, kind of stretch it, and he just sold at Christmas. When they went in the toy stores, he became like super rich. It was like $5 or something like that, right? So it's just a great example. I remember seeing him talking about the prototype, because he kind of kept figuring out, changing it a little bit until they got to where like, this is what we want to do. All right, so pilot programs are an example of this, by the way, or television pilots for shows. So this is actually a YouTube link for The Simpsons first episode, December 17th, 1989. It is the longest running TV show in the history of television, and a very successful show, animated, obviously, and Matt Groening's the creator, founder, and that was the original one, and it looks different, right? Because this was the prototype or the pilot, just the first example. So, and if pilots, if people don't like the pilot, then they don't pick up the show, and then the show doesn't go anywhere. So every show you've ever watched on Netflix, TV, Paramount Plus to just Amazon, they're all HBO, right? There was always a pilot. They made a little miniature version of the show or the movie, and they let people see it, because again, people don't just want to read the script and go like, oh, let's do it. They want to see it, and they see the pilot, and then they decide, let's do it, or no thanks, right? And they pass on it. So after a group selects the best solution, it must determine how the solution can be then put into effect. So you may wish to consider the following questions about how do we know the solution is going to work? So number one, how can a group get approval and support for its proposed solution? Right, so we get some feedback, right? Our customers give feedback to this business, the idea if they approve and they support it, this product, this service, this new menu item. Number two, what specific steps are necessary to implement the solution? We have this new menu item. We need to get the food there. We need to have the right people who can cook it, right? And that everyone knows how to serve it, what it should look like. We have the dishes that it should go on. I don't just assume that the dishes we already have are appropriate. Number three, how can the group evaluate the success of its problem-solving efforts? Again, how do we know? Well, sales, probably, right? Comments, feedback. Then we taste it ourselves. We test it on our employees, right? That's like a soft opening, for example, maybe. And then tools for implementing a solution. So there are two key tools for implementing a solution. You got an action chart and a flow chart. Action chart and a flow chart. So action chart is a grid that lists the tasks that need to be done. Tasks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? Action chart, and then it defines who. So think about this as a preview of your group presentation, right? It's like, what's going on, who's doing it, or who's doing it, what they're doing, right? Such a chart is, and you do that again, the review and in conclusion, again, everyone in the group should participate. Right, everyone in the group should participate. So such a chart is based on more elaborate diagrams and procedures, such as a PERT diagram. So PERT actually stands for Program Evaluation Review Technique. It actually came from the U.S. Navy when they were developing the Polaris missile program in the 1950s. All right, so program evaluation and review technique, right? Just an action chart. Here are some things that you should do. So number one, identify the project goal, identify the activities needed to complete the project. Number three, identify the sequences of activities, like what should be done first, second, third, in order. Because sometimes you don't want to go out of order and realize like, oh, dang it, we went out of order, we have to fix that, causes a problem, then we have to solve it. Number four, estimate the amount of time it should take to complete each task. Number five, determine which group members should be responsible for each task. And number six, develop a chart that shows the relationships among the task times and people and a sequence of events that are needed to accomplish the project. Flow chart. So I got a diagram here that shows you what it is. It's a step-by-step diagram of a multi-step process. So, flow chart might be like instructions for assembling IKEA furniture. Usually it sucks, but it's a flow chart, right? So consider example, one group is charged with choosing and carrying out a fundraising activity, right? So we make a flow chart for that. What are all the things that we should do step by step in order to make this succeed in terms of do this, like a bake sale? So flow charts can help a group see whether the various procedures they have identified solve a problem and practical and fit together. And a flow chart can also help your group work through logistics and identify practical problems moving from one idea's conception to its implementations, right? So when we go through the logistics, we think, well, what if I do a bake sale? We need to get people to bake things, bring them there. We need point of sale, cash register, an accounting system, like a canopy, a table, and a place garbage can, right? To make sure we have to have everything in place for us to succeed. And then we think about how to get all that there, who's going to do it, and what's going to cost, right? And then we have money to cover that, and then we'll raise enough, and then we got a fundraiser for the bake sale. So like an action plan, a flow chart is a way to give structure to group thought. Flow charts can be very simple or very complex. 11.3.6. So how to use reflective thinking in your group. So remember, this is the traditional way of thinking of problem solving. So again, reflective thinking is most useful in helping groups understand the basis of problem solving. As Ernest Bowman has noted, difficulties arise when group participants demand rationality from a group throughout its deliberations. Remember, we're not all rational, unfortunately. If people were rational, they'd be super predictable, and the world would be a better place if we were all rational, right? We were always doing things with good logical thinking and reason. So, but people aren't like that. Remember, humans we're creatures of emotion. So lots of times our emotions guide our decisions, which makes us do irrational things. So, I mean, right, there would be nobody in prison if you were rational. You know what? Actually, nobody would murder each other. Like some of the crazy irrational crimes, nobody would do any of those, right? Everybody wear your seatbelt. You would do all the safe, reasonable accommodations in your life all the time. Those are the rational things to do. But not everyone wears their seatbelt, for example, right? So number one, so let's take time to reflect on the procedures the group is using, how group members are interacting. So we can see, are we interacting? And let's maybe change that, make it easier, right? To reflect is to consciously consider precisely how the group and the individual group members are talking with one another. Is Discord working, right? Maybe we should do Canvas messaging again, Professor. Again, it goes towards our Canvas online participation points, right? So number two, let's clearly identify the problem you were trying to solve. Assignments here. Number three, phase the problem as a question to help group guide the group discussion. So asking questions to the group discussion. What should we do, guys? What topic should we choose? I've suggested these, right? You ask a lot of questions because people tend to answer questions more than just statements when it comes to like discussion feedback. Number four, do not suggest solutions to you and analyze the problem first. So say, you know what, before I came up with these ideas, solutions for our informative speech, I thought about what is an informative presentation, right? I looked at the description of the assignment, I looked at the samples. So okay, so now I think I have a better idea of what we're doing and maybe a criteria for that, and thus choose a good topic that fits this assignment. Number five, in the definition and analysis steps of reflective thinking, do not confuse the causes of the problems with its symptoms. Number six is constantly evaluate your group's problem solving method. Remember, you need to change it sometimes because you learn things and realize, oh my gosh, we need to totally reevaluate because the problem is not what we expected, right? You ever try to figure out like what's wrong with your car? Right, and you think it's this, and you really right, and you have to constantly reevaluate the whole problem-solving method. Number one way to figure out what's wrong with your car is listen to the engine and listen to the noise it makes. Like the repetition, the whirring, is a lot of the axles, wheels. You can kind of figure out where the problem is coming to. And if you can record the sound and show it to your mechanic, that's really, really helpful. Sound, what they hear in a car engine is, I think, the best way, unless it's obvious when you look at it, right? Oh, there's a gigantic bunny rabbit running across the snow in front of me. So it's getting its winter coat. So it's like really It looks more. All right. And for many years, the only problem-solving method suggested to group decisions was actually reflective thinking. But now there's lots of different ways we can do this, and we've learned a lot of them, right? Like the Pareto chart, the force field analysis, the cause and effect fishbone diagram, for example. So appoint one or more group members to remind the group to use a structured method of solving problems. Again, leaders should be doing that. You ask these questions in the group chat and discussions. Hey, don't forget, we need to get some structure to the way we're coming up with all of our topics for our assignments as a group. So because those are the decisions we're supposed to be making, right? So 11.4 is we do question-oriented approaches to problem solving. That's again where we ask questions. A lot of people like to frame things as questions to better understand them. And then 11.4, apply the real ideal solution, the single question problem solving methods to a group discussion. We learned those earlier. So you start asking everyone to figure out like what we should frame it as a question, and then we can look at it the way everybody framed it. And then 11.1, we got the ideal solution format. Remember, ideal means almost like perfect. What's your ideal person, ideal car, ideal house? Obviously, problem-solving groups want to identify the best solutions to problems. So in the ideal solution format, groups answer questions designed to help them identify what would be like the best solution, period. Like it would be ideal, right? Because obviously you always want to do that if you can. But if it's impossible, then you got to move to lesser alternatives, right? But just figure out that that's the highest best idea. It'd be ideal, right? Alvin Goldberg, Carl Larson have devised the following agenda of questions when it comes to, remember, using the question format. We're going to learn more about that. We learned about in 11.4. So number one is, do all members agree on the nature of the problem? Number two, what would be the ideal solution for the point of view of all parties involved in the problem? Number three, what conditions within the problem can be changed so the ideal solution might be achieved? Number four, of the solutions available, which one best approximates the ideal solution? 11.42 now, let's talk about, let's bring this into a single question format, right? This is a little more applicable. So like the ideal solution format, the single question format poses a series of questions designed to guide the group towards the best solution. So Goldberg and Larson suggest the answers to the following 5 questions can help the group achieve its goals. So number one, what question does the group need to answer in order to accomplish its purpose? So what's the question that we need to be in, like, frame the problem, that way we can actually meet our purpose, right? To inform, to persuade, to create a business idea. Number two, what sub-questions must be answered before the group can answer the single question it has formulated? So again, you break the big question up into a bunch of sub-questions. Right? Number three, does the group have sufficient information to answer the sub-questions confidently? You did your research. What do we know? Sometimes we realize we don't know enough. So we don't have enough information. So we have to guess if we want to make a decision based on this, right? Like you might say, I want to go build this project. What is the inflation going to be next year? Because our project is going to take us 2 years to finish. So if the cost of lumber and parts and metal goes up, like again, next year, we won't be able to afford this project, right? So you're just like, do we know the answers to these sub questions? Are we confident about it or not? Right. So again, if you don't know, that has to be part of the equation about deciding, all right, too, as well. Number four, what are the most reasonable answers to the sub questions? So again, you're good at research. Number five, assuming that the answers to the sub questions are correct, what is the best solution to the problem? What's ideal? All right. So 11.43, how to use question oriented approaches to your group. So by guiding groups towards their goals with questions, the ideal solution and single question formats help groups agree on minor issues before they agree on solutions to problems. Right? It's just a great way to frame discussions through questions. It's why in court there are a lot of questions, right? In a job interview, there are a lot of questions, right? It's just a great way to really get to what you're trying to do. So my problem is I need to hire the best person for the job, right? So job interview helps me solve that problem. All right. So think about, and job interviews are full of questions. All right, so Larson's study indicates that the ideal solution in single question formats generated better solutions than in the reflective thinking approach. So question approach is actually better than the traditional reflective thinking approach, but all three approaches fare better than no approach at all. Remember, so some structure, some technique helps versus having that. So let's talk about leading a group discussion. So number one, when the ideal solution or single question approach, provide group members with copies of the questions that will guide the discussion, hand them out, email them to, put them in the chat, right? So that people can kind of look at the questions, right? And that helps, again, you have an agenda of things to go, I've come with some questions, let's go through them one at a time. You can use some of the uncertainty that normally occurs and make sure everybody knows the procedure. Like this, we have a list of questions, you're gonna look at them and then we'll talk about the answers to them afterwards and whether you want to change the questions or you think the questions could be better, right? So let's tell the group to use the questions as a guide, right? So you're kind of, as a group discussion, you're instilling the question format structure onto the group. And a lot of people are very cool with that, right? Because it'll help the group succeed. Number two, explain why you're using the format you have selected. So you don't just tell them we're doing it, you explain why. And groups are willing to go along with particular discussion agendas, especially if you give them reasons to have selected it. So tell the group that you're considering specific questions in the developmental format can keep the discussion on track. If your group has a specific time period, we don't want to be here forever. But, this will help us stick to that, right? Number three, because it creates efficiency. Number three is let's keep the discussion focused on the specific question under consideration. So again, blinders, focused on the task, on the question. It's not going on any tangents. Whether the group is using the ideal solution or single question format, some group members may be tempted to skip a question or may want to discuss something else that's unrelated, right? So you have to kind of keep the group focused, keep the group focused on the question one at a time and don't stray from that and keep to the structure and the agenda. Right. And then several studies suggest that groups of members who try to keep participants aware of the pertinent issues by summarizing the discussion at the end and requesting clarification. Any questions? Have a better chance of getting agreement on a solution and then getting better satisfaction with the overall discussion. So I should summarize everything at the end of my meetings and then also ask if you have any questions or clarifications. Number four, let's agree to use a work together approach, collaborative approach to solving problems. So LaFosse and Larson suggested that the single question format can be enhanced if group members explicitly consider the question. What principles should we agree on in order to maintain a reasonable and collaborative approach through the problem solving process? Get everyone in the group to agree with that. And no name calling. Let's be open-minded. Let's be supportive. Let's be encouraging. Let's be respectful, right? And then consider this question early in the problem-solving process. Making collaboration and problem-solving value can enhance teamwork and cooperation. Now, let's talk about putting principles into practice. Decision-making or following your instinct. A lot of people follow their instinct, by the way. Don't go through a decision-making process, which is why, again, I would say don't assume people are rational. All right, so 11.5. What do you do, by the way, when it comes to things? Do you follow your instinct or do you try to go through a decision-making process? It's really interesting, right? Just as a person, when you make, I'm trying to think of a decision you might make. Would you, you're trying to figure out your major. Are you studying all the majors and your strengths and weaknesses and what you might be in the careers and getting research and information, or are you kind of following your instinct? I've always wanted to do this, right? And interesting. All right, so 11.5, beyond technique. So we've learned all these techniques. Let's go beyond that. Let's determine which one's the best or what's the most suitable for a given group discussion. So the key, we believe, is to listen to your group, watch, observe, and identify what the group needs at a given time. In a word, adapt. So adapt to the needs of the group rather than assuming that a predetermined strategy or technique will somehow miraculously help the group or team achieve a breakthrough. If the group seems confused, disoriented, or stuck when defining or analyzing the task in front of it, then a more structured technique, such as the cause and effect diagram or force field analysis, may be what the group needs. All right, so let's do this case study and then we'll wrap it up today. And it's who loses their job. This is on page 179. We talked a lot about the case studies in all the other chapters, and this one's a big one. It's two slides. All right, so it's who loses their job. You have to help decide. So you know that all employees are full-time, all work the same number of hours. You only have one formal rule you need to follow. Whoever you lay off, one person, must be job related, right? So understand that when you get the background information on all the different candidates and you have employees here, is you're supposed to only choose the job related issues to fire them for, right? You can't choose anything else. So which of the following employees would you and your colleagues choose to fire? Make the best decision you can with the limited information you were given. So be prepared to discuss the reasoning behind your group's discussion. So case study in your group discussions, right? Group discussion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Who would you fire? Page 179, chapter 11. You should answer this as part of your group discussion. We'll go towards your Canvas online participation score. And I will just take a look at who did it and who didn't do it, right? And as a group, you should discuss Masha, Bob, Trent, Madeline, Katrina, Antonio, right? So I'm not going to give you the answer. You should discuss this in your Canvas discussion. We'll wrap it up, but I'll go over the candidates. So Masha's 33, married with 2 children. She's worked company for 5 years, loves her job, requires little or no supervision. You have considered giving her a promotion. Other people go to Masha with questions. She's good at training others. She's been going to school part-time to get a degree and will graduate in another year. All right, Bob, he's 49, he's divorced, has a child. He's worked the company 22 years. He keeps to himself, but always gets work done. You've never had to give him instructions because he knows his job so well. People call him Pop because he's like a father figure and he's well liked. He really adds a great deal of stability to your department. He does not want to change his job at all because he's happy. You put Bob in charge when you're gone, in your absence. All right. Trent, he's 19, he's single, Native American. He just began working, he's 11 months in. He went to an accelerated school as a child, started college when he was 15 years old. He's already graduated with a business degree, shows a lot of promise. He's already the best salesperson in your department. People get along with him because he's new, needs lots of training, but his sales are worth your extra time. Madeline, she's 25, married, 3 months pregnant. She's transferred to your store only last month, but she has over 3 total years of experience. You're not really satisfied with her attendance because she calls in sick a lot. However, she's the only person that you feel you can give your most difficult task to because she's very thorough. She's also had lots of customer compliments. Katrina, she's 40, single, has 3 children. She's a recovering alcoholic. She fulfills a very necessary function in your department. She does maintenance work. No one else really has time for that. Katrina is efficient. She's never late. However, she does not really associate with others. She's been there over 10 years. She's also cannot read or write. It's also likely that this is one of the few places that she could find work. Antonio, 27, single with no children, has worked 2 years in the department, won 3 awards. That's outstanding. He's the heart and soul of your retail. Wow. He's your most conscientious worker, keeps your department looking great. You wonder, though, whether he comes to work under the influence of drugs. Several customers complain about poor grooming habits and language. And last month, he has made significant improvements. All right, group session. Go for it. Chapter 12 on Wednesday or next meeting. See you later.